If you'd love your home to look like it was straight out of an interior design magazine pages, then tune on in. As a working mum, you're probably thinking, yeah, right, like that will ever happen. But turning the clutter and chaos you call home into a space you can't wait to get home to might just be easier than you think, with a bit of expert help, of course. Welcome to the Property Management Podcast. I'm your host, Kylie Walker, or That Property Mum, as many of you know me as. Now, can I ask you a quick favour before we dive in to today's epic episode? Now, we all know how important reviews are for businesses these days, and mine is no different. So if you could spare just a minute to follow, rate and review the podcast, it would mean the absolute world to me. Now, today's episode is a little bit different. We are talking about interior design. And hands up if you are clueless when it comes to interior design or styling your home. And that is me. Even though you want it to look like a Hamptons style home 24/7, which if you've got kids, you know is impossible, right? And that is one of my goals actually, is to own a Hamptons home on the beach with a chef and trainer. But my guest today is Katrina De Vere, an interior designer based on the Sunshine Coast. I met Katrina at a business retreat recently, and she absolutely loves property and has been a savvy investor over the years. Her business is called De Vere Design Co., and it's a full-service interior design, decorating studio, and she services mainly high-end clients. But as someone who has limited home styling flair, me, I literally chewed her ear off for free advice on how to spruce up my home. And I thought, well, maybe a few of you might like to hear a few of her pointers as well. So that's how Katrina ended up with me on the Property Management Podcast. And I absolutely love our conversation. She shares not only styling advice for busy mums, but also some great tips for renovating tired investment properties that won't break the bank, and a bonus share on how she uses manifesting to build the life she loves. So let's dive on in. Thank you so much for joining me on the Property Management Podcast. Now, before we dive in, can you please tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started doing what you do?
Sure. Well, my name is Katrina De Vere. I'm an interior designer based on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. I do full-scale interior design, so full service. So that's everything doing detailed plans for high-end renovations and commercial spaces, right through to furniture selections as well. So, and picking all the pretty stuff in between.
That's amazing. I am the worst interior designer. I will just put that out there right now. And this is a little bit of a different topic for our audience because it's a very, I guess, admin heavy sort of business. So I'm really excited to have a chat to you about diving into being a little bit more creative and thinking a little bit more creatively. And I think we'll focus obviously on rental properties as well, but I want to just talk about everyday working mums. Now we're busy, we're in and out of our houses. We don't have a lot of time really to think about what our houses look like. I'm guilty of, sort of just shoving everything off the bench and into drawers and cupboards. But what are some hacks that we could take from your experience and put it into our own homes to give us that little bit of an interior design flair or edge?
Certainly. Well, I think decluttering, even though it's not an interior design act, it's actually something that makes the space that we live in feel so much more enjoyable, and it actually improves our mood as well. So I think of the home that we live in is the outward reflection of our inner soul, so to speak. So you want that to project, in your surrounds. So clutter-free, cluttered house, cluttered mind, uncluttered house, uncluttered mind for starters. And then things like, personalizing bedroom spaces. You don't have to spend a fortune to make things feel beautiful. Places like Pillow Talk and Kmart and Big W actually have some really nice pieces that are fairly inexpensive for, everyday people these days. So looking at, picking a colour that you like or a pattern that you like, and then pairing all your pieces back to a main focal piece. If you start with a piece of art, picking colours up in those pieces to put on the bed, keeping your bed covers quite plain, not too heavily patterned, and actually jumping online and looking up how to make beds as well. So if you can learn how to make a bed look and feel luscious and comfortable, that's going to improve how you feel in your surrounds instantly.
So maybe go back to the beginning and give us some tips on how, if we wanted to do some work on our own houses, what are where do we start? How do we make them look like somebody like you has come in and overhauled our entire home?
In a rental property?
Or just in our own homes? How can we sort of, where do you start? Break down the process for me.
Yeah, so you would start with mood boarding the space that you want to work on. So you can use programs like Canva or even basic PowerPoint, to create a mood board. And you start with a collection of images that you may have collected on Pinterest. They'll always have a common thread. You're picking pictures that actually make you feel a certain way. And so it's that emotional response that draws you to that image. And then you're just looking for common threads through those pictures. So it could be particular colours, it could be a particular style, trying to pinpoint what that is, and then working from that pinpoint in selecting products. So, like I said, starting with things like, cushions or bed linen is quite easy, rugs, little decor, pieces, varying shapes and sizes grouped together. So we call that vignettes. So creating little groups of 3 beside the bed, changing in height and texture and tone does that quite well. Light-filled spaces, obviously we always like places that are light-filled. So when we're looking at curtains and things, picking things that allow the light to come through, that don't block everything out during the daytime is quite important. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. I am a Kmart shopper or a Target shopper for anything when it comes to putting my home together. And it is a bit of as you were saying earlier, the cluttered mind, cluttered house. That is exactly what my house is like at the moment. So if I wanted to declutter, do you have some great advice and tips on how to get started with that process? Because I actually really need that right now.
Do you? Well, I live fairly clutter free. Like for me, I love my surroundings just to be this, blissful space. The rest of my family doesn't live that way, of course. But yes, with decluttering, absolutely. Are you using it regularly? That's incredibly important when decluttering. What's the reason for hanging on to something? Is it because you're using it regularly or you have an emotional attachment to it? If you have an emotional attachment and it's not something that you're using on a regular basis, then that's something that you should probably pop into some sort of storage, box hidden away in a cupboard or something. So, less is more. In your surrounds. You don't have to fill a space with an excess amount of things for it to feel nice. If you have less pieces in your home that you just focus on, displaying nicely, you'll actually achieve a less cluttered home.
Beautiful. And let's talk about property management now. And one of the issues that we experience a lot as property managers is we've got a lot of landlords that don't like to do a lot of renovations on their properties. And sometimes it can be quite difficult in certain markets, rental markets, to be able to find tenants or quality tenants. So what are some of the best, renovation tips or places to start just to spruce up a tired or dated property that won't break the bank for a landlord?
Yeah, the obvious one is always paint. Like paint will transform the way that a space feels. I guess a lot of the time it's not something they can do themselves, but if you can do it yourself, you're looking down the barrel of, a handful of hundreds of dollars versus thousands of dollars. We can look at things like, freshening up bathrooms, like even a really good deep clean in an old space can actually change the way it feels. So if you look at really tired tiles and grout, having those things professionally cleaned can enhance the way the space feels. Over many years, tiles will get a very thick layer of dirt sitting on top of them, so they are dull and not so nice looking. So cleaning is one thing. You can actually paint tiles. So you can refresh a bathroom space by repainting tiles. When we look at spaces like kitchens, again, cleaning of grout, you could replace splashback tiles to freshen up a kitchen, and you can actually paint kitchen cabinetry and bench tops as well. So if you do have a little bit of the DIY inside of you, there's plenty of things that you can do to achieve a fresh feeling investment property quite simply and effectively.
I've actually also tiled over the top of my tiles in my own house, actually, rather than pulling them up. So that was quite inexpensive, really.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things you can do. And we personally have done it in an investment property that we had. We actually took all of the kitchen doors and drawer fronts out, and we sanded them and primed them and painted them. So we repainted all the cabinetry doors, put new handles on, and then just replace the bench tops with a very inexpensive Laminex style bench top, but with a nice, so when you think about like old school bench tops, they have that rounded edge to them. It's very daggy and old. You can get laminate bench tops with a nice square edge these days. So it just gives it that really fresh, feel. And it was quite inexpensive. I think the paint to paint the cabinetry was maybe $300. So, I mean, you can freshen a space up fairly quickly and inexpensively just with a little bit of your own time and these things.
Yes, yeah, a bit of blood, sweat and tears as well. So what are your, I guess, top 3 interior design tips or advice for us?
For you as for everybody, or property managers, or?
Let's do it for everybody.
Okay. So the top 3 interior styling tips would be pick a colour scheme or a theme to stick to. Absolutely, like I've said. Less is more, and you can shop budget, but just, spend some time practicing styling. Like, styling is the be-all, end-all for how a space feels. I could walk into your home and you've got plenty of nice pieces, but if they're not arranged in a particular way, then they're not going to give the same kind of feeling if they're a bit scattered all over the place. So we do like to cluster things together. So creating little clusters of pieces is a really good tip. And clutter-free and fresh. And I actually am a big fan of fuss-free bed linen. So staying away from patterns and bold colours. I think people can be drawn to bold colours quite easily, but they don't really do in your home what you think they might do when you see them in the shop. So sticking to a plain colour on a bed and then adding in accent cushions is a really good way to achieve a designer look, and throw rugs as well on beds is a good thing.
So they would be sort of styling tips, or is styling tips different to that? I'm so clueless when it comes to interior design. So
no, that's pretty much it. Like, so styling tips, yeah. So so clustering, so creating vignettes is a big styling tip. Adding cushions to furniture, creates that luxurious sort of softness. We prefer feather-filled cushions as opposed to sort of the polyfill cushions. So they're very stiff and structured, whereas your feather-filled give that softness, to a space, and they have that luxurious feel. So you can fluff them up and do the little, the chop in the middle, that kind of thing. And then, like heights, we work with heights a lot. So, tall, medium, small. If everything's the same size as each other, it doesn't look right. So taller, maybe a little bit fatter, down a little next level and a little bit slimmer again, and then, shorter and slimmer again. So when we're grouping things, we're looking at a difference of heights and widths as well.
Brilliant. So I absolutely love personal development. Can you share a tool, resource, book or podcast that you think will help our listeners?
Yeah, I love manifesting. That's my go-to for everything. So I really actually just a real big fan of taking time for yourself, to be with yourself, and preferably outside, and actually really dropping into, what you're feeling and what you're wanting in life and in business, and really leaning into that with your thoughts and your speech. I think, what we say outwardly is what we get back in return. So I think being really, really conscious of the words that exit your lips, ensuring that they're not negative, that they're not kind of a precursor for a negative lifestyle, basically. So, like speaking about what you want quite confidently and quite happily, without any fear of being judged for that, is really important.
So on that topic then, I'm just sort of new to sort of the world of manifesting, and I love it. I love the concept. Do you have any secrets or any stories to share that around that topic that has worked for you, or you've seen evidence of it in your life?
It's focus. It's 100%. Just believing with everything that you are that is going to come to fruition for you. If you start questioning it, then you're inviting in, doubt, and you're offering the opportunity for it not to come through. So just 100% conviction that is coming your way, or that you're working towards that. I mean, like, obviously, like you can manifest winning lotto, but it's not something you can take steps towards achieving without, buying a ticket every week. So it has to be something that you can take steps towards achieving, but just having 100% conviction in, believing that is something that is happening for you. Yes, it has happened for me quite a few times. It actually happens around property a lot. I'm a huge fan of property. I love buying and selling property. And for me, when I see a property, I've actually had it. We were looking for an investment property once, couldn't find anything. I drove past his house and I said, I need that house there to come on the market. Next week, that house came on the market and we bought that house. So it was just 100% conviction, right? That's the one that needs to come up for sale. And that's what happened. So, you've really got to, zone in on what you want, and 100% conviction that that's coming your way.
Oh, I love that so much. I can think of so many things that I am going to put that conviction into straight after this podcast recording. Now, how can our audience connect with you further?
So via Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is probably the best platform for me. It's where the majority of my clientele comes from, or word of mouth. So
fantastic. I will share some links in the show notes to some of your handles and information there as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so grateful for our conversation.
You're very welcome. It's been lovely. Thank you so much.
If you love the Property Management Podcast, you've got to check out the PM Collective, hosted by my friend, Ashley Goodchild. She discusses things like how to have awkward conversations about pay rises, yes please, how to raise the bar in property management, and why so many people just seem to fall into the industry. You've got to love stories like that. She'll leave you with great advice, actionable steps to take, and let you know that you're not alone in any of the challenges that you face. So be sure to check out the PM Collective wherever you get your podcasts.